Tonight we're venturing deep into the heart of Texas, where the highways stretch forever, and the road hides more than just dust and distance. From strange figures waiting at deserted motels to phantom lights chasing travelers across the desert, get ready for 20 of the creepiest road trip tales from deep in Texas that will make you question every stop, every shadow, and every mile ahead. But before we begin, here's something unsettling. Most viewers make one huge mistake. They leave without subscribing, and by doing so, they miss out on the darkest, spine-chilling stories that only the bravest dare to hear. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now, because these roads never end and the horror waiting just beyond the headlights is far from over. So, where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Let me know in the comments, because here, the night is only getting started and the terror is waiting to unfold. Now let's dive into the darkness. It was late September of 2017, a Thursday night bleeding into Friday morning, when I pulled into a little gas station off Highway 84 just outside of Abilene, Texas. I remember because I had been driving nearly 7 hours straight trying to make it back from visiting my girlfriend in Lubbock. My plan was to push all the way through to Dallas before sleeping, but by the time I hit the outskirts of Abilene, my eyelids were lead weights, and my gas tank was running dangerously low. The night was warm, the kind of sticky warmth that makes your clothes cling. The dashboard clock read 2:14 a.m. The highway was empty in both directions, nothing but the rhythmic thrum of my tires and the occasional flick of a grasshopper striking the windshield. When the glow of a gas station sign appeared on the horizon, it felt like a relief. It wasn't a modern chain, no gleaming Loves or Buc-ee's with spotless bathrooms and aisles of snacks. This was the kind of station you almost miss if you blink too long, tucked just off the road, its single fluorescent sign buzzing faintly with the word fuel half burned out. I pulled into the gravel lot, parking beside the only lit pump. The building was squat and boxy, with a yellowed glass front and a steel door hanging slightly crooked on its hinges. One of the overhead lights flickered in a slow, irregular rhythm. The air smelled faintly of dust and old oil, like the entire place hadn't been updated since the 80s. I killed the engine and stepped out. The silence was immediate, pressing. Out here, away from the hum of the highway, you could hear how empty the land was. Just insects churring in the dark grass and the occasional rustle of wind against the metal siding. The pump looked ancient. Instead of a credit card reader, there was just a faded sticker. Pay inside first. I sighed, rubbed my eyes, and made my way toward the glass door. Inside, the light was dimmer than I expected. A single row of flickering fluorescents buzzed overhead, leaving the corners in shadow. The place smelled of dust and something faintly metallic like a mechanic's shop. The shelves were half empty, lined with sun-faded boxes of snacks, a few cans of soup, some warm bottles of soda. Behind the counter stood the attendant. He was tall, too tall. His frame stretched out thin under a brown uniform shirt that looked 2 sizes too big. His hair was slicked back and thinning, his skin pale in the humming light. What caught me off guard first were his eyes. They were wide and unblinking, fixed directly on me the moment I stepped inside. "Pump 3, I said, sliding a 20 across the counter. His hand came up slowly, deliberate, to take the bill. His fingers were long, unnaturally so. And when his skin brushed mine, it felt strangely cool despite the heavy night air outside. He slid the cash into the register without breaking eye contact. "Gas is ready," he said. His voice was flat, monotone, like someone reciting lines phonetically. "Thanks," I muttered, trying to shake off the unease creeping up my spine. I grabbed a bottle of soda from the cooler, figuring the caffeine would help me push through the last few hours. When I placed it on the counter, his gaze dropped to the bottle and then back up to me. "That'll be $2, he said. I handed him a crumpled bill. His expression didn't change. His eyes didn't blink. Not once. I forced a smile, trying to make it normal. "Hell of a shift, huh?" He just stared. I felt my smile falter. Without another word, I grabbed the soda and turned toward the door. I had almost convinced myself I was being paranoid, Maybe the guy was tired, maybe he had some kind of medical condition. When I glanced back, he was still watching me, head tilted slightly forward, eyes wide and glassy, following my every move. Outside, the night air hit me like a wall. I tried to shrug it off, telling myself I was just overtired. I filled the tank as quickly as I could, the numbers on the pump clicking up in the silence. When I finished and replaced the nozzle, I glanced toward the building one last time. He was standing in the window now, not behind the counter, not moving, just standing there, framed by the glass, staring directly at me. I swallowed hard, climbed into the car and locked the doors. My heart was beating too fast, louder than the engine when I started it. As I pulled out of the lot, the gravel crunching under my tires, I made the mistake of checking the rearview mirror. He was outside. The attendant was standing in the middle of the road, his thin frame lit by my taillights, motionless except for the tilt of his head as he followed me leaving. His eyes, though I couldn't possibly see them from that distance, felt fixed on me, unblinking. I drove faster than I should have, trying to put miles between myself and that gas station. But the whole way back to Dallas, every time I glanced in the mirror, I half expected to see him again, standing in the glow of my headlights, waiting. The part that unsettles me most happened weeks later. I was cleaning out my car, tossing out old receipts when I noticed one had slipped between the passenger seat and the console. I pulled it free and froze. It was the receipt from that gas station. The total matched, the timestamp matched, but at the very bottom, beneath the faint ink numbers, someone had written 3 words in small, precise handwriting: "See you again." I haven't driven Highway 84 at night since, and when I pass through Abilene, I make sure my tank is full long before the outskirts, because I know if I stop again, he'll be waiting. And this time, I'm not sure I'd drive away fast enough. It was July 14th, 2017, just after 9 in the evening, when I was driving back from Big Bend National Park toward Alpine, Texas. The heat had finally started to die off after a punishing day, but the air still carried that dry, dusty warmth that sticks to your skin no matter how high you crank the AC. My rental car's dashboard thermometer read 93 degrees. The sun was dipping low, flattening itself against the horizon in a smear of orange and violet. Out there, the desert feels endless. Miles of scrub and jagged silhouettes of mountains cut into the sky, broken up only by the thin black ribbon of Highway 118. I was alone. I'd spent the last 4 days camping in the park, trying to prove to myself I could disconnect for once. No cell service, no news, no endless notifications. Just me, my tent, and the desert silence. By that last night, though, the solitude had begun to feel less peaceful and more oppressive. It was like the desert had grown tired of me, pushing me out with its brutal heat and quiet. That's what I told myself anyway when I packed up at dusk and decided to drive into town for a real bed. The road was nearly empty, just me and the occasional distant set of headlights appearing and disappearing like ghosts in the heat haze. I was somewhere between Study Butte and Alpine, in that middle stretch where the road unspools in a straight line and you can see 10 miles ahead. That's when I noticed it. An old Ford pickup pulled over on the shoulder, hood propped open, hazard lights clicking in the dark. There was a man standing beside it. He waved his arms high, almost frantically, as I approached. My first thought was that he needed water, maybe a phone. Out here, that could be life or death. So I slowed down, easing onto the gravel shoulder. My headlights swept across the truck, late 70s, maybe early 80s, battered blue paint, the kind of rust you only get after decades of hard miles. But by the time I rolled to a stop, the truck wasn't there anymore. I blinked, leaning forward against the wheel. All that remained were 2 shallow ruts in the dust where tires had pressed down, leading a few feet into the desert brush before fading into nothing. The hazard light glow I thought I'd seen, gone. The waving man, gone. Just open desert, stretching flat and empty beneath the purpled sky. I sat there a long minute, engine idling, trying to logic my way out of what I'd just seen. Maybe the heat played tricks with the light. Maybe dust had caught in my headlights, looking like Flashing hazards, but the tire marks, those were real. I could see them clearly, cutting off into scrub that couldn't possibly hide a whole truck. I told myself not to overthink it. I shifted back onto the highway, glancing into my mirrors as I picked up speed. The desert behind me was flat, endless, and black. No truck, no man. Just me again. By the time I reached Alpine, I'd half convinced myself I was overtired. I checked into a cheap roadside motel, the kind with humming neon and doors that opened to the parking lot. The clerk, a tired woman in her 60s, slid the key across the counter without looking at me. I showered, lay down, and told myself I'd laugh about it in the morning. I didn't laugh. I woke around 2:30 a.m. to the sound of gravel crunching outside my window. My room was dark except for the sickly orange glow of the lot light seeping through the curtain. I lay still, listening. The footsteps were slow, dragging almost, moving past my window toward the row of rooms. Then came the click, click, click. It took me a second to place it. Hazard lights. That same metronomic sound, muffled but distinct, as if a vehicle sat idling just outside. My heart thudded against my ribs. I slid out of bed and parted the curtain a sliver. There, parked crooked in the lot, was the same blue Ford pickup I'd seen on the roadside. The hood was still up, casting a long shadow under the floodlight. Only this time, no one stood beside it. I dropped the curtain like it burned me. My mind raced. There was no way it could be the same truck. Even if by some insane coincidence there were two beat-up blue Fords with the hood popped, what were the chances one had followed me here? And yet, when I dared to look again, it hadn't moved. The hazard lights kept their steady rhythm. Click, click. I thought about calling the front desk, but what would I even say? Hey, there's a truck outside. They'd laugh at me. So I turned on the TV instead, trying to drown the sound with late-night infomercials. Eventually, exhaustion won out. When I woke again at dawn, the lot was empty. No truck. I left Alpine, early, eager to put miles between me and whatever the hell that was. But as I drove north on 118, I kept checking the rear view, half expecting to see a blue Ford gaining on me. The road was empty. I didn't tell anyone about it for months, not until Thanksgiving when I was back home with my family in Dallas. After dinner, I mentioned it half-jokingly to my uncle, who'd worked border patrol near Marfa years back. His face went pale in a way that silenced the whole table. He told me, flat and serious, that there'd been a string of strange accidents out there in the 80s. Drivers swerved off the road to avoid hitting a broken-down pickup that wasn't really there. People who stopped to help swore they saw a man waving, only for the truck to vanish when they pulled over. A few never made it back to the road. When I pressed, he shook his head and said something I'll never forget. Next time you see him, don't stop. Don't even slow down, just keep driving. He isn't waving you down for help. I wish that had been the end of it. But last summer, 4 years after that night, I was driving west on I-20 outside Odessa, long after dark. Different car, different stretch of highway. I hadn't thought about the truck in years, until I saw those familiar hazard lights blinking ahead on the shoulder, the same battered blue Ford. Hood up. A man standing beside it, waving his arms. I didn't slow down, but as my headlights swept past, he turned toward me. His face was pale and blurred, like a photograph left out in the sun too long, features washed away. And his eyes, they were the only part that seemed clear, bright as high beams following me as I sped past. I didn't look back. I can't shake the feeling that one day, maybe on some long, lonely stretch of road, I won't have the choice. Because sometimes when I drive at night, I swear I still hear it faintly under the hum of the tires. Click, click, click. It was just after 2 in the morning when I pulled into the rest stop on I-35, about 20 minutes north of Waco. I remember the exact time because the green glow of the dashboard clock burned into my eyes whenever I glanced down, fighting the fatigue that was tugging at me harder with every mile. The air was heavy, still clinging to the wet warmth of a storm that had passed earlier. The asphalt shimmered faintly under the orange floodlights, glistening as if it hadn't fully dried. I pulled my car into a space near the vending machines and killed the engine. The sudden silence was a relief, but it also left me with that hollow, ringing quiet that follows too many hours behind the wheel. The rest stop itself was one of the newer ones, at least it looked that way at first. The building was squat and rectangular, with that standard beige brick and a long row of windows along the front. 2 vending machines buzzed faintly against the wall, one glowing red for sodas, the other pale blue for snacks. A few picnic tables stood under the awning, their wood darkened by the earlier rain. Beyond them stretched the black line of trees, their outlines sharp against the low, cloudy sky. I stepped out of the car and felt the warm night air press against me, carrying the faint smell of wet earth and something chemical, like the tang of fresh paint. The bathroom doors stood off to the side. A couple of fluorescent lights flickered above them, buzzing loudly enough to fill the silence. Inside, the bathroom smelled faintly of bleach. Freshly cleaned, I thought, though at 2 in the morning I doubted anyone had been through recently. The tiles were still damp in places, reflecting the pale light. I splashed cold water on my face, studied the tired stranger staring back at me in the mirror, and told myself I just needed caffeine. Back outside, I fed a couple of crumpled bills into the vending machine. The motor whirred, and a plastic cup dropped, followed by a stream of steaming coffee that smelled faintly burnt. I held it in my hands like it was something alive, grateful for the heat and the promise of wakefulness. That was when I noticed the quiet. Not just the absence of cars on the highway, though there were none, but the absence of everything else. No insects drumming in the trees, no distant hum of passing semis, no movement at all, except the pale fog that hung just above the asphalt. Shook it off. Road fatigue, I told myself. You start to hear silence like it's a sound. I got back in my car, started the engine, and pulled out of the lot. My headlights carved twin beams through the mist as I rolled back onto the on-ramp, following the curve that should have spat me southbound toward Waco. Only, when the ramp straightened, I wasn't on the interstate. I was back in the rest stop, Hartu. At first I thought I had looped the wrong way, that I'd taken the exit for the northbound side instead of south. But when I turned again, carefully following the painted arrows, the ramp fed me right back to the same lot. Same floodlights, same vending machines, same damp picnic tables under the awning. I pulled into the same spot I'd just left, the warmth still lingering in the seat when I killed the engine. Jesus Christ, I muttered to myself, gripping the steering wheel tighter than I needed to. I tried again. This time I drove slower, studying the turns, the curves. My headlights caught the reflective paint on the guardrails, the signs pointing to I-35 South. But no matter how I turned, no matter how carefully I followed the directions, the ramp circled back. Each time the lot looked exactly the same. The same arrangement of litter on the pavement, the same faint trickle of water running down the curb. Even the cup of coffee I'd left cooling in the holder was still full of steam when I returned. I stayed in the car the third time, engine idling. My hands felt slick on the wheel. I remember whispering out loud, like it would break the silence. You're just tired, it's just missing the right turn. But in my chest, the weight of it was building. The wrongness of the silence, the sterile perfection of everything around me. I forced myself out of the car, slamming the door, harder than I meant to. The sound cracked against the stillness like a gunshot. My eyes darted to the tree line, half expecting something to move. Nothing did. I walked to the picnic tables, my footsteps sticking slightly on the damp asphalt. The wood was wet beneath. My hand when I touched it, but it wasn't cool. It felt warm, like the heat of a body lingers on a seat after someone stands up. There was no one else around. No cars, no signs of other travelers. Just the buzzing fluorescence and the hum of the vending machines. I tried again to leave. This time I pressed, harder on the gas, refusing to look back, telling myself that if I just kept driving straight, no turns, no ramps, no matter what the road looked like, I'd break out of it. The fog thickened. My headlights caught nothing but white vapor, swirling in slow eddies. My pulse hammered as the road curved, but I didn't turn the wheel. I kept it straight, knuckles white, eyes fixed on the line of yellow reflectors. When the fog thinned, I was back in the lot, Same space, same machines, same coffee cup, still steaming faintly as if not a second had passed. I killed the engine. My chest felt hollow, like the air had been sucked out. I sat there staring at the building until I noticed something that made my stomach turn. One of the windows was lit now. Dim yellow light glowing from inside the rest stop building. It hadn't been lit before. I told myself I wouldn't go in. Every instinct screamed at me not to. But the longer I sat, the more the silence pressed in, and the more that light seemed to pull at me like gravity. The glass doors opened smoothly when I pushed. Inside, the air smelled faintly of bleach and something older underneath, like mold, trying to hide beneath chemical sweetness. The lobby was empty, rows of plastic chairs bolted to the floor, a rack of maps and brochures. The light came from a single lamp on the counter where an attendant might sit, though there was no one there. I stood listening. A sound reached me then. A faint scuff, like a shoe on tile, coming from deeper in the building. Hello? My voice cracked. No answer. I backed away, pulse pounding in my ears, until I was outside again under the buzzing floodlights. My car sat waiting in its space, my coffee cup still steaming faintly in the holder. I don't know how many more times I tried to leave after that. Maybe 5, maybe 10. Each time, the same loop, the same suffocating return. At some point, the coffee stopped steaming, but the cup never emptied. I don't remember deciding to give up. I just remember driving straight into the fog one last time. Not turning, not blinking, letting the white swallow me whole. When it cleared, I was back on I-35, southbound, the clock still glowing 2:17 a.m., as if no time had passed at all. I never saw the rest stop again, though I've driven that stretch of road a dozen times since. There isn't one where I pulled off. I've checked maps, GPS, even asked locals. There is no rest stop there, but every time I pass that mile marker at night, I feel it watching for me. And sometimes, if I glance in the rearview mirror, I swear, I can see the glow of a vending machine light flickering faintly in the fog behind me. It was late September of 2017, somewhere near Lubbock, Texas. I remember the exact date because my sister had just called earlier that day to remind me it was Mom's birthday, and I felt like a lousy son for forgetting to send flowers. I was driving back from a delivery job that had taken longer than it should have, and the weather had turned against me. The sky looked like a bruise, purple and black rolling into each other, and the rain came down hard enough to blur the highway lines. My wipers worked double time, squeaking every pass, but the road still shone like glass beneath my headlights. I hadn't seen another car in at least half an hour. Just flat Texas farmland stretching out in every direction, dotted by the occasional telephone pole leaning like an old drunk. The kind of emptiness that makes you feel small, even inside the safety of your car. I turned down the radio because the static kept cutting through, and for a long stretch, it was just the hum of the engine and the relentless drumming of rain. That's when I saw him. A figure ahead on the shoulder, walking against the storm with his thumb sticking out. At first I thought I was imagining it. Nobody would be out here in that weather on foot. But as my headlights drew closer, the shape solidified. He wore a yellow raincoat, the kind of old-fashioned slicker kids used to wear in the 70s. It glowed under my beams like a warning sign. His hood was up and the water rolled right off him in sheets, pooling around his boots. I should have kept driving. Every instinct told me not to stop. But something about seeing another human being out there, soaked and stranded, felt wrong, to ignore. I slowed, easing onto the shoulder. My tires hissed over the wet gravel, and the car rocked slightly as the wind shoved against it. The man didn't turn right away. He just stood with his thumb out, waiting. When I pulled up beside him, he finally turned his head toward my car, and that's when I felt the first spike of dread. His hood had shadowed most of his face, but when the headlights passed over, I didn't see features. Just a pale, smooth expanse where his face should have been, like a mannequin or worse, like raw skin without eyes, without a mouth, without anything. I remember jerking back against the seat and blinking hard, convinced the rain had distorted my view. But when I looked again, his hood was tilted down. All I could see was the edge of his chin, pale and wet. Human, but wrong in a way I couldn't name. I thought about flooring it, about pretending I hadn't seen him. But before I could decide, he walked forward and pulled open the passenger door. The interior light flicked on, and for a second the raincoat shone like molten gold. He climbed in without asking, water dripping onto the floor mat. The smell hit me immediately. Not sweat, not mud, but something metallic and sharp, like wet pennies. My stomach turned. "Thanks," he said, his voice muffled, almost distant, like he was speaking through a wall. I forced a smile I didn't feel and nodded. "Yeah, no problem." I put the car back into drive, pulled onto the road. The silence stretched. Rain hammered the roof, filled every pocket of quiet, but inside the car it felt too still. I didn't want to look at him. My eyes flicked to the rear-view mirror instead, to the road behind me. But the glass caught part of his reflection. His hood still shadowed most of his head, yet in the mirror there was nothing at all where his face should have been. Just blank, smooth. I almost swerved. I gripped the wheel hard enough to hurt. "Heading east?" he asked after a while. Yeah, toward Dallas." My voice sounded thin. "Good." He shifted slightly in the seat, the wet fabric squeaking. "That's where I need to be." I didn't ask why. I didn't ask where in Dallas or what business he had. I just drove, my heart pounding in my throat. The air in the car felt colder, the longer he sat there. My breath fogged faintly, though the heater was on low. We passed a farmhouse off in the distance, its windows glowing faintly through the storm. I wanted to pull in, make some excuse, anything to get this thing, out of my car. But the driveway whipped past before I could act, swallowed by rain and night. Minutes dragged, the miles blurred. Every time I glanced sideways, I caught glimpses of his chin, his throat, his hands resting limp on his knees. The skin was too pale, almost translucent, veins like blue threads under thin parchment. And the smell. That copper tang filled the cabin, stronger with every passing minute. I rolled down my window slightly despite the rain, desperate for fresh air, but it didn't help. At one point he leaned closer. The hood turned in my direction. My stomach knotted, and I fixed my eyes on the yellow lines slick with water. "You shouldn't have stopped," he said. My hands trembled on the wheel. I swallowed, throat dry. "What?" His voice was calm, almost kind. "Not everyone on the road needs saving." My mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. For a few long minutes, neither of us spoke. Only the storm filled the silence. When I finally gathered enough courage to glance his way again, the seat was empty. Water pooled where he'd sat, soaking into the fabric. The door was shut tight. I slammed the brakes, the car fishtailing for a terrifying moment before regaining traction. My headlights caught only rain and asphalt. No figure on the road, no yellow raincoat. The passenger seat was drenched, but I hadn't heard the door open. I hadn't felt the rush of cold air that should have come with it. He was just gone. I sat there shaking, my hazard lights clicking in the dark. My pulse thundered in my ears. I wanted to believe I'd imagined it, that exhaustion and storm and isolation had played tricks on me. But the smell lingered, sharp and metallic, filling my nose until I gagged. When I finally forced myself to drive again, I didn't stop until I saw the glow of Dallas on the horizon. Even then, when I parked under the buzzing lights of a gas station, I checked the back seat 3 times before I could breathe again. The seat still carried the faint outline of a body, and when I leaned close, the fabric reeked of copper. I never drove that stretch of highway again, and I'll never ever stop for someone wearing a yellow raincoat. It was the first week of October, a Tuesday night, when I ended up on that road. I remember because it was the kind of crisp autumn evening where the air smells faintly like burning leaves, even when you're miles from anywhere. I had been driving, back from Dallas after a work conference heading toward San Antonio. My phone's GPS suggested a faster route that would shave off 30 minutes by cutting through some backroads. I'd driven those highways before, and I was tired of the endless churn of semis and flashing billboards, so I tapped accept without much thought. The name of the place flashed on the screen as I followed the turnoff. Mason Creek. I didn't think twice about it. Texas is full of little towns that nobody outside the county has ever heard of. The sun was down, the horizon still clinging to a thin orange bruise of light. The road narrowed into 2 lanes, cracked and lined with tall grass on either side. For a while, it was nothing but fields, a few broken fences, and the dark silhouettes of trees. My radio lost reception, so I drove in silence with the window cracked, the cool night air spilling in. About 20 minutes in, lights appeared up ahead. Relief washed over me. Civilization. First came a gas station, its old fluorescent sign, buzzing faintly. There was a man in a cap smoking outside, leaning against a pickup. He didn't look up as I passed. A few blocks later, I rolled by what looked like the main street. There was a diner with neon in the window, a laundromat, a hardware store with its display lit up, and even a small school off to the side. The school's chain-link fence rattled softly in the wind, the swings shifting on their rusty chains. The town was small, quiet, but alive. I made a mental note that if I got too tired, I could circle back and grab coffee from that diner. I didn't stop, though. I drove straight through Mason Creek, following the GPS until it merged me back onto the state highway. That should have been the end of it. The next morning, sitting at my hotel, I opened Google Maps to see where exactly I'd passed through. I zoomed in on the route. Highways, farm roads, landmarks, but no Mason Creek. I scrolled, pinched, searched. Nothing. I tried Apple Maps, then MapQuest out of sheer desperation. Not one of them showed a Mason Creek anywhere near my route. I thought maybe I misread it, so I typed Mason Creek, Texas into the search bar. The only results were a subdivision near Houston and a nature preserve hours away. No town. That should have been strange enough, but I brushed it off. Maybe it was one of those unincorporated places, too small to appear online. The memory of that diner, those glowing neon letters, reassured me. I had seen it, but the unease wouldn't let go. That night, curiosity got the better of me. I told myself I'd retrace my route. It was reckless, another long drive after a full day of meetings, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Around 9 p.m., I set off again. The GPS didn't mention Mason Creek this time. It only showed the state highway route, no suggestion of a shortcut. I dug through my phone history, scrolling back through navigation logs, but the detour I'd taken the night before wasn't listed. I remembered the turnoff, though. I drove until I reached the spot where the voice had told me to exit. A narrow, 2-lane road branched off just like before. I took it. The road was darker this time, the sky moonless and heavy with clouds. My headlights stretched into the tall grass, catching the glint of barbed wire here and there. I drove for what felt like longer than before, gripping the wheel tighter, eyes flicking from the pavement to the dark tree line. But nothing appeared. No gas station, no diner, no schoolyard swings creaking in the wind, just road stretching on until finally it dead-ended at a locked metal gate. The words, "Private property, no trespassing," spray-painted across it. I sat there, engine idling, heart hammering. This wasn't the road I'd taken, it couldn't be. I'd passed right through a whole town. I turned around and drove back, faster this time, the kind of jittery speed that comes when your skin feels too tight and your thoughts won't line. Back at the hotel, I tried to sleep, but my dreams were thick with neon signs humming in the dark and swings moving in an empty playground. The next day, I asked one of my coworkers, native Texan, born and raised, if he'd ever heard of Mason Creek. He frowned, shook his head. "Nope. Where's that?" I described it, the diner, the school, the gas station. He laughed a little. "Man, you probably drove through some old town that got folded into another county. Texas has tons of those. Hell, half of them are ghost towns by now." But the way he said ghost towns stuck with me. When I finally drove home at the end of the week, I told myself I wouldn't look for Mason Creek again. I'd already wasted enough time. But about halfway down the interstate, I saw a green road sign. It pointed toward a county road with the words, Mason Creek Road. My hands tightened on the wheel. My chest buzzed like static. I didn't take the turn, but as I passed, I thought I saw, just for a second, the glow of neon flickering through the trees. I don't know how to explain it. I've tried to find records, old maps, county archives, but there's nothing. Not a single trace of a Mason Creek town ever existing along that stretch of highway. And yet, I can still smell the faint grease and coffee from that diner. I can still hear the squeal of those swings in the night air. What unsettles me most is the thought that if I had stopped that first night, if I'd pulled into the diner for coffee, or fueled up at that gas station, I might not be here writing this. Now, because some nights when I'm driving home late, my GPS lights up with that same glowing blue line. Turn left onto Mason Creek Road. I've never been one to believe in omens, and I'm not superstitious. I don't flinch when a black cat crosses my path. I don't knock on wood, and I don't carry charms or rabbit's feet. But I need to write this down, because something happened to me out on Highway 281 that I can't explain, and it's been gnawing at me for months now. It was Tuesday, March 12th of this year. I remember the date because it was right after I'd closed a deal for a client in San Antonio, and I was driving back home to Marble Falls. I'd left late in the day, around 9:30 at night, because the meeting had run longer than I thought, and I wanted to avoid the worst of the Austin traffic. The weather was warm but cloudy, the kind of thick, damp spring night in Texas where the air sticks to your skin like a film. There was no moon. Highway 281 is one of those roads that feels like it was made for night driving. It cuts straight through the black, with the occasional rise and dip, lined by pastures and scrubland and the occasional ranch gate. At that hour, the road was almost deserted. Just me, the radio turned low, and the faint red glow of my dash. About 45 minutes into the drive just north of Blanco, something ran out into the road, a dog. Big, low, fast, black. I saw it at the edge of my high beams, a dark blur lunging out from the ditch. My stomach dropped, and I yanked the wheel hard to the left. My tires squealed against the pavement. For a split second, I was sure I'd hit it, but there was no thud, no bump under the wheels. Nothing. I coasted to a stop on the shoulder, heart hammering, palms slick on the steering wheel. My headlights pointed out into an empty field. I craned my neck, trying to see where the animal had gone, but there was nothing. No movement, no sound. When I got out to check, that's when I noticed the marks. On the front bumper, just below the headlight, were 4 long scratches. Deep. The kind you'd expect from a big cat, not a dog. I ran my fingers over them, half expecting the plastic to be cracked, but it was smooth around the edges. Fresh. That was when I realized the night had gone completely silent. I hadn't noticed it at first, but standing there on the side of the highway, I became aware of just how wrong the air felt. No crickets, no cicadas, no distant lowing of cattle or the hum of the wind, just dead quiet. I told myself it was nothing, got back in the car and pulled onto the road. But as I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone anymore. Every so often, in the corner of my headlights, I thought I saw movement, something running parallel to the car just outside the reach of the beams. At first I thought it was my imagination, some leftover adrenaline making shadows jump. But the more I tried not to look, the more certain I became that something was keeping pace with me. When I passed through Johnson City, I slowed down at the light, and in the reflection of the storefront windows, I swear I saw it, just for a second. A black shape low to the ground, loping alongside me in the dark. Its eyes caught the light. They weren't red, not glowing like in a movie, but they reflected pale, like the dull gleam of bone underwater. I pressed the accelerator and didn't stop again until I was back in Marble Falls. I pulled into my driveway, shut the car off, and sat there for a minute, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles ached. When I finally got out, the air was normal again. The frogs down by the creek were croaking, the cicadas buzzing, the trees rustling in the breeze. Everything felt ordinary, but the scratches on my bumper were still there. I told myself I'd just clipped something, maybe a coyote or a stray dog, and my brain had filled in the rest. But later that week, I was at a bar with a buddy of mine and I mentioned it. He froze, beer halfway to his mouth. "On 281? He asked. "Yeah. North of Blanco," I said. He set his drink down slow. "You saw the black dog?" I laughed, but he didn't. He told me about an old hill country story, the kind ranchers used to tell around campfires. They said there's a dog out there, big as a man, all black, that runs the roads at night. Some say it's a hellhound. Others that it's an omen of death. If it crosses your path, it means someone close to you is going to die. I brushed it off, but that night I didn't sleep well. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those pale, watery eyes staring back at me from the side of the road. 3 days later, my neighbor across the street was found dead in his truck. Heart attack. He'd been pulling out of his driveway when it happened. Engine still running, headlights pointed at nothing. I know how it sounds. I know it could be coincidence. But I haven't driven 281 at night since. And sometimes when the crickets outside fall quiet all at once, I think about that stretch of road, the deep scratches in my bumper, and the shape that kept pace with me in the dark, and I can't help but wonder if it's still out there waiting for me to take that drive again. I was driving west on I-40 late last summer, sometime around mid-August. It was a Thursday night close to 11:30 p.m. The sky above the Texas Panhandle was thick with stars, the kind of night where the air feels thin and brittle, like if you breathed too hard the atmosphere might snap. I had been on the road for hours already, my second day of driving cross-country, and my shoulders ached from gripping the steering wheel. My plan had been to push through to Albuquerque before stopping, but fatigue got the better of me somewhere outside Amarillo. My eyelids felt like they had weights sewn into them. I spotted a neon sign flickering in the distance. Desert Air Motel. It wasn't the chain I usually trusted, but I was too tired to be picky. The place sat just off the frontage road, squatting, low against the flat, endless land around it. There were only about a dozen rooms arranged in a crooked L shape around a parking lot with more cracks than asphalt. A single street lamp hummed near the office, throwing pale light onto a sagging soda machine. Inside the office, the air smelled faintly of dust and old cigarettes. The clerk, a thin man in his late 40s with greasy black hair, combed flat against his skull, slid a brass key across the counter without much conversation. The number stamped into it was 7. His hand lingered a second too long on the key when I picked it up, his eyes following me with something I can only describe as weary indifference. Room 7 was near the far end of the row. The door was already open when I got there. That struck me as odd, but exhaustion drowned most of my caution. I pushed it wider, and a puff of stale, damp air greeted me. The first thing I noticed was that the bedspread was wrinkled, as if someone had just gotten up from it. When I laid my hand on the mattress, I froze. It was warm. I stood there, staring at the bed, my pulse suddenly awake. There was no luggage in the room, no signs of anyone hiding in the bathroom or closet. Still, the idea that someone had been there moments before gnawed at me. I told myself maybe the staff had just finished cleaning, though the room didn't smell of cleaning supplies. If anything, it smelled faintly of sweat. I shut the door, slid the bolt, and pulled the curtains closed. I remember telling myself I'd just crash for a few hours and be gone by sunrise. That was the plan. I tried to settle in, but sleep wouldn't come. The hum of the old AC unit filled the silence, but I could hear things beneath it. Tiny creaks, faint thuds, the settling of the building maybe. At one point I was sure I heard footsteps outside my door, slow and deliberate, stopping just beyond the thin wall. My heart thudded in my chest, but I didn't get up. I was too drained to deal with paranoia. Around 2:30 a.m. I gave up on sleep. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and thought about just packing up and leaving. That's when I noticed something. The brass key on the nightstand wasn't the one the clerk had given me. The number stamped into it wasn't 7, it was 9. I know for a fact I set the original key down before lying back. I stared at the new one for what felt like a full minute, trying to make sense of it. Room 9 was 2 doors down, I remembered. I convinced myself it had to be a mix-up. Maybe I had grabbed the wrong key at the counter and in my tiredness I hadn't noticed. I told myself that until the excuse tasted like sand in my mouth, because I knew what number the clerk had given me. At some point I drifted off despite the knot in my stomach. My sleep was shallow and fractured, filled with half-dreams where I was aware of the room around me, yet unable to move. In one of them, I swore the door opened, and I could hear breathing just inside the threshold. When I woke, sunlight was pressing hard against the curtains. The first thing I did was check the nightstand. The key was gone. Not the original, not the replacement, just gone. The bedspread was rumpled again on the opposite side of where I had slept. I left without even showering. I dropped the empty key fob on the counter of the office. The clerk didn't look surprised, didn't ask questions. He just nodded slightly like he'd been expecting it. Back on the interstate, I tried to shake it off. Long drives do strange things to the mind. Lack of sleep twists ordinary details into something sinister. That's what I told myself. But 2 hours later, I stopped at a gas station, and when I opened the driver's side door, I swear to God there was a brass key sitting on the floor mat. This one had the number 11. I didn't touch it. And I haven't stayed in a roadside motel since. It was the night of November 12, 2021, a Friday. I remember because it had rained hard most of the afternoon, and the smell of wet earth still clung to the air even though the pavement had already dried under the cold wind. I was driving west, along Highway 36, somewhere between Boulder and Estes Park, trying to make it through the winding mountain roads before midnight. I had been up since 6 that morning, and the combination of the weather, the monotonous curve of headlights on wet asphalt, and the dull ache in my neck was making it difficult to keep my eyes open. I'm not usually the type to do long hauls alone at night, but my cousin had asked me to help haul some furniture from his storage unit back to his new place near Fort Collins. He couldn't rent a van that weekend, so I borrowed one from a friend, loaded it up, and found myself halfway through the foothills with 4 more hours to go before I could finally crash on his couch. Somewhere after Lyons, I passed a small gas station and saw a semi idling off to the side. A man was leaning against the hood smoking. On impulse, and maybe because the road felt so empty, I slowed down, pulled in, and asked him if he had a CB radio in his truck. He laughed, said of course, and I asked if I could borrow it for the stretch ahead. I told him it wasn't for emergencies. I just wanted something to keep me awake. He didn't seem to mind. He gave me one of those handheld mics connected by a coiled wire and told me which frequency most truckers were using that night. I figured it was like company, even if it was just chatter. The static filled the cab as I pulled back onto the highway. At first it was just white noise, then the occasional distorted voice crackling through. Someone talking about icy roads farther north, someone else cursing at a slow driver. The familiarity of it, the cadence of normal people talking to kill time, kept me awake better than caffeine could. I remember gripping the wheel tighter, leaning forward into the darkness as the road climbed. It was around 11:30 when the static shifted. I'd driven miles without hearing another car. My headlights reached only as far as the next bend, the trees crowding close on both sides. I had the radio volume set low, almost like background noise, when a woman's voice broke through. The static, not a trucker's bark or casual slang, but soft, breathless, as though she were speaking too close to the mic. "Don't stop," she said. That was it. 2 words, swallowed by the hiss of static. I sat upright, staring at the receiver on the dash. A moment later it repeated, same voice, same rhythm, like a recording. "Don't stop, don't stop, don't stop." I turned the dial, thinking maybe I had drifted into some weird frequency, but it stayed there. Every few seconds the whisper pushing through, "Don't stop." I asked if anyone else was on that channel, my voice sounding strange in the empty van, but no one answered. The woman just kept repeating it. I thought maybe it was some trucker's idea of a joke, or late-night weirdness from a ham radio operator. But my hands were clammy on the wheel, and the more she said it, the less it felt like a prank. It sounded like pleading. 10 miles later, rounding a curve near the mouth of the canyon, I saw a car pulled off on the shoulder. Its driver's side door was wide open, swinging slightly in the wind. No hazard lights, no one standing outside, just a lone sedan, abandoned, with the driver's seat empty and the interior dome light glowing faintly. I slowed instinctively, my headlights washing over the vehicle. The CB whispered again, "Don't stop." My chest tightened. I tapped the brakes, debating. Someone could be hurt. Someone could be wandering in the dark needing help. But something in me recoiled. The interior of that car looked too neat, too deliberate, like it had been staged to catch attention. The open door was angled just enough that I could see it from far back. And the voice, the way it had lined up with what I was seeing. I can't explain it, but every instinct screamed at me not to pull over. I kept driving. My pulse thudded against my throat, and I kept checking the rearview mirror until the abandoned car finally vanished into the dark. After that, the voice stopped. The CB went back to its low, lonely static. No chatter, no warnings about road conditions, nothing. Just the hiss, like a dead channel. I thought about pulling into a rest area to shake it off, but I couldn't bring myself to stop. Not after hearing her, not after seeing that car. By the time I reached Estes Park, I was half delirious with fatigue. I returned the van the next morning and didn't tell my cousin about it. Didn't tell anyone, really. It sounded too ridiculous. But 2 days later, I saw a news story online. A hiker had found a car abandoned along Highway 36. Driver's side door wide open, no one inside. Authorities were asking for information about a missing woman last seen near Boulder the week before. It was the same spot I had passed. Same make and color of car. They never found her. And sometimes when I'm driving alone late at night, I still hear static on the radio that isn't supposed to be there. Every now and then, under the hiss, I swear I hear her voice again. Softer now, strained. Not just "don't stop." Last time I could have sworn she said my name. It was late on a Tuesday night in early November of 2021, just after daylight savings had pushed sunset into what felt like the middle of the afternoon. I remember because the clocks in my truck hadn't been changed yet, and for most of that drive I kept doing the math in my head to figure out the real time. It was just past 9 p.m. actual time when I was heading west out of Odessa, Texas on FM 866, a 2-lane county road that cuts through a flat nothingness of scrub, dust, and mesquite. The weather that night was cold for West Texas, upper 30s, a stiff wind pushing tumbleweeds across the road. The sky was clear enough to see the stars, but there's no real darkness out there anymore. The oil fields throw their orange glow into the sky, and the air always seems to carry the faint smell of gasoline or burned plastic, like something seeping up from the ground itself. I had been working a long shift hauling pipe for one of the drilling companies. I wasn't in any hurry to get home, just tired. My body heavy from the kind of exhaustion where you stop noticing the radio playing and your own thoughts dissolve into static. That was when I saw them. A line of taillights ahead of me, maybe half a mile down the road. At first I thought it was just a convoy of other trucks, maybe guys from a different rig heading home at the same time. But the thing was, they were perfectly spaced. 4 of them. Bright red dots in the darkness, moving slow enough that I could see them bob slightly with the uneven pavement. I figured I'd catch up soon enough. Out here, you learn to stick together when you can. Roads this empty play tricks on your head. I followed those taillights for close to 30 minutes. Every time I thought I was gaining, they seemed to drift just a little further, as if the road was stretching. Once or twice I even sped up to 70, then 75. But the lights kept their exact distance, never closer, never farther. It was hypnotic, the way they pulsed against the black road. I realized I hadn't seen a single intersection, no gas stations, not even a ranch gate in miles. Just those lights. Around the 40-minute mark, one of them flickered. Just a little. stutter like a dying bulb, and then it winked out. The other three kept on as steady as before. I frowned and leaned forward in my seat, suddenly wide awake. Out here, people don't just stop. If you break down, you keep your hazards on until somebody notices. That one light was just gone. Another 10 minutes, and a second light disappeared. No flare, no dimming. Just there 1 second, gone the next. That left two, gliding smooth and steady down the road like they hadn't lost anyone. My stomach twisted then, a creeping dread that made the hairs on my arms rise. I told myself maybe they had turned off onto a dirt road I hadn't seen. Happens all the time. But then why didn't I see their headlights sweeping off into the dark? And why were the remaining two still holding perfect distance? Perfect speed. Like nothing had changed? I gripped the wheel tighter, telling myself I'd just keep following. My exit was still another 20 minutes away, and I didn't have any other markers in the landscape to guide me. No cell service either, not on that stretch. It felt safer to keep those lights in sight. But then, as if on cue, the third light vanished. Now it was just one, a single red glow floating in the black, leading me forward into nothing. I slowed down then, dropping to 50. I wanted to see if maybe I'd pass the others, find some sign of them on the shoulder. But there was nothing. No tire marks, no hazards, no dust cloud, no bodies of trucks. Just empty highway and the crunch of gravel under my tires. I was sweating even though the heater was barely on. My throat was dry. I considered turning around, but there was nowhere to turn. Out here, it's miles before you can find a safe spot wide enough to swing back. So I just kept going, eyes fixed on that last taillight. I must have followed it another 10 minutes before it too went out. I saw the blink, the red reflection in my windshield. And then I was alone. No glow, no sign of another vehicle. Ahead, just black road stretching out forever, the stars smeared across the sky and my headlights stabbing into an empty space that felt like it was swallowing sound. I eased my foot off the gas, coasting. My brain tried to come up with explanations. Maybe I had dozed off. Maybe they'd been a trick of tired eyes and taillight reflections from some refinery. But I hadn't been sleeping. I'd been watching too closely. I know what I saw. When I finally reached the spot where the last light had disappeared, there was nothing there. No turnoff, no ranch road, not even flattened grass on the shoulder. Just desert. Silent, empty desert that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. I slowed nearly to a crawl, leaning out my window into the cold night air. I don't know what I expected to hear. An engine idling, someone cursing, the metallic clank of tools, but there was nothing. Only the wind hissing low through the mesquite. I kept driving after that because what else was I supposed to do? I reached my exit, took the ramp, and pulled into the first gas station I found. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and I remember just sitting in the cab of my truck with the engine off, staring at my hands on the steering wheel. They were trembling. I hadn't even noticed until then. I don't usually tell people this story. When I have, they laugh and say I was just tired, that I must have imagined it. But I've been driving these roads for years. I know the difference between fatigue and something that isn't right. Those lights were real. They led me somewhere, and then they vanished like they'd never existed. The part that unsettles me most is what happened 2 weeks later. A buddy of mine, also a driver, mentioned he'd been out past Odessa around the same time of night. He said he saw headlights. Ahead of him, 4 of them, spaced evenly, moving like a convoy. Only when he caught up, there weren't any trucks. Just road and empty air. I didn't tell him what I'd seen, I couldn't. Because if more people are starting to notice them, then maybe it wasn't just me. And that means whatever those lights are, whoever they belong to, they're still out there waiting for someone else to follow, and if you do, don't. Don't follow them, because I think they'll lead you somewhere you don't come back from. It was late October when this happened, specifically the night of October 28, 2019. I only remember the exact date because it was 3 days before Halloween, and the entire panhandle was already restless with decorations, parties, and the kind of subtle tension that always hangs in the air before the end of October. That night I was driving north on Highway 287, cutting through the flat, empty fields of the Texas Panhandle. It was a little after 11 p.m., cold enough that the heater in my car had been running for over an hour, and the wind was brutal. Sharp gusts hammering against the side of my old Toyota Camry like invisible fists. I had left Amarillo late, trying to get back to my apartment in Dumas before midnight. But the roads were long, empty, and monotonous. The headlights stretched out across nothing but dirt and dry grass mile after mile, punctuated only by the occasional lonely farmhouse light far off in the distance. My gas gauge was sitting close to empty. That's the only reason I stopped. Spotted a little station on the right-hand side of the highway. A squat concrete building with a single flickering fluorescent tube hanging above two ancient-looking pumps. The sign above the awning had once been painted red but was so bleached by years of wind and dust that I couldn't make out the name. It looked abandoned at first glance, but the pumps were lit, and there was an orange open sign glowing. In one of the dusty front windows, I pulled in. The parking lot was cracked asphalt, uneven with weeds pushing through the gaps. The air smelled faintly of oil, iron, and something acrid like burnt plastic. The wind whistled through the prairie grass around the lot and rattled the loose metal sign against the side of the building. The place gave me a bad feeling right away, but the gas tank was nearly bone dry. And out there, you didn't get to be picky. Inside, the store was exactly what you'd expect from a rural panhandle station. Buzzing fluorescent lights, cracked linoleum floor, racks of faded candy and dusty soda bottles that probably hadn't been touched in years. An old man sat behind the counter reading a newspaper, not looking up when I walked in. He was thin, almost skeletal, with deep-set eyes and gray stubble across his jaw. I nodded at him. "Just filling up?" I said. He didn't respond. He just licked his finger, turned a page in his newspaper, and kept his head down. I was too tired to push it, so I swiped my card at the pump, filled my tank, and figured I'd use the restroom before getting back on the road. That was my mistake. The restroom was around the side of the building, not inside. A heavy steel door with peeling green paint and a corroded handle. I had to tug hard to get it open. The hinges squealed like something dying. Inside, the bathroom was small and grim. A single toilet with a broken seat, a cracked sink, a buzzing fluorescent bulb overhead that blinked every few seconds. The walls were covered in pale yellow tile that had darkened with age and grime, and the floor smelled of mildew and ammonia. But what struck me most was the mirror above the sink. It was fogged, not slightly, not like someone had washed their hands and left steam, completely fogged like someone had just taken a boiling shower in there. Only it was cold. I could see my breath in that bathroom. There was no way it should have been fogged. I stared at it for a second, then wiped a circle, clear with my sleeve, and that's when I saw it. My reflection was there, yes, but behind me, just for the briefest second, was someone else. A man, standing in the far corner of the bathroom, smiling. I spun around so fast I nearly fell, my shoulders slamming into the sink. But the corner was empty. No one was there. Just the flickering light, the cracked toilet, the dirty tiles. I turned back to the mirror, heart hammering. The fogged glass showed only me now, pale and shaken, sleeve wet from wiping it down. No man. No smile. I told myself it was exhaustion. I had been driving since early that morning after all. Long roads, cold weather, caffeine crashes. It had to be my brain playing tricks. But when I opened the door to leave, the knob was ice cold. Colder than anything else in that room. So cold it felt like it burned my palm when I pulled it open. Outside, the wind hit me like a wall. The lot was empty. Quiet except for the rattle of that loose metal sign. My car sat by the pump. The old man was still at the counter, head bent over his newspaper. I didn't look back. I got in the car, locked the doors, and pulled out as fast as I could without skidding on the cracked asphalt. But I couldn't shake the feeling. All the way back to Dumas, every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I expected to see him. That man, standing in my back seat, smiling. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the fogged mirror, saw his face behind mine, blurred but grinning like he knew something I didn't. The worst part is that I've driven past that station twice since then. Both times I slowed down, glanced over at it. Both times it was dark, boarded up, windows smashed, awning collapsed. The pumps were gone, ripped out of the ground. That bathroom shouldn't have even existed the night I stopped there. But I know what I saw. And sometimes, when my apartment bathroom mirror fogs up after a shower, I still check behind me, just to be sure. It was just after midnight on a Tuesday in early October 2021 when it happened. I had been driving back from San Antonio after visiting an old college buddy. The night was cool for Texas standards, a soft breeze keeping the air from feeling heavy. The stretch of highway was mostly empty, save for the occasional 18-wheeler groaning past in the opposite direction. The dashboard clock read 12:47 a.m. I remember that number clearly, because I had been fighting off drowsiness, counting the minutes to keep myself alert. The road was a straight line of black asphalt cutting through the dark, with my headlights casting long cones of pale light across the empty expanse. Nothing unusual, nothing worth remembering. And then I saw the overpass. It rose up out of nowhere, as if I had missed a sign for it, though I hadn't. The structure was made of raw concrete, weather-stained and pitted like it had been there for decades. Streetlights lined the top, but they were dim, casting weak amber glows that didn't quite reach the road below. What caught my attention first, though, wasn't the overpass itself. It was the children. There must have been at least 20 of them, standing shoulder to shoulder along the railing. Their small hands gripped the metal bars, their heads tilted slightly downward, all of them watching me as I approached. They didn't move, they didn't wave, they didn't speak. Just rows of children, silent and still, their faces pale in the weak light. I slowed down without meaning to, foot easing off the gas, my pulse thudding in my ears. I could make out details as I passed beneath. The outlines of thin arms, the shine of eyes catching headlights. Some of them looked younger, maybe 6 or 7, others older, preteens. They weren't dressed alike, but none of their clothing seemed modern. Faded jeans, old-fashioned t-shirts, some wearing jackets too big for their frames, as if they'd been borrowed. I even saw a girl in a frilled white dress, the kind my grandmother used to wear in old photographs. I craned my neck slightly as I passed underneath, trying not to drift out of my lane, heart hammering. They leaned forward just enough to peer down, every head turning in unison as my car rolled past. Not a sound, not a shuffle, just eyes following. Then I was through. My car surged forward into darkness again. I blinked, checked my rearview mirror, expecting to see the shadowy mass of concrete looming behind me. But there was nothing. No overpass, no streetlights, no children, just open highway stretching behind, flat and endless. My stomach dropped, and I gripped the steering wheel so tight, my knuckles ached. I tapped the brakes, half considering pulling over, but something deep in me screamed not to stop. Instead, I pressed harder on the gas. The miles that followed felt unreal, like I was driving in a dream. I kept glancing in the rear view, half expecting to see those pale faces reflected in the glass. My radio, which had been playing quietly, began to crackle with faint static. Not loud, just a soft hiss beneath the music. I turned it off. Silence filled the car, pressing against my ears. I told myself I was tired, maybe hallucinating. Long drives at night can play tricks on the mind. I wanted to believe that, I really did, but I know what I saw, and that wasn't the only time. 2 weeks later, it happened again. Different highway, different stretch of road, this time just outside Laredo. Same time of night, just past midnight. Same sudden overpass appearing where no overpass should be. Same children, lined up with their small fingers clutching the railing, watching in silence. And just like before, when I looked in my rear view, the road was empty. Since then, I've asked around. Truckers mostly, at rest stops and diners. I don't tell them exactly what I saw, I don't want to sound insane, but I'll ask casual questions. Ever notice strange overpasses on long routes? Weird things late at night? Some shrug. me off. Others give me strange looks like they know something but don't want to say it. One older trucker, a leathery guy with deep lines carved into his face, stared at me for a long time after I asked. Finally, he muttered, "Keep driving. Don't stop. Whatever you do, don't stop under there." Then he went back to his coffee, refusing to say more. I don't know who those children are or why they appear. I don't know why the overpass vanishes as soon as you pass beneath. But I know this. When I drove under that impossible structure, every instinct I had screamed at me that something waited just beyond sight. That if I slowed down, if I dared to stop, I'd never leave that highway alive. And sometimes when I'm back home lying in bed at night, I swear I can hear it again, the faint hiss of static, like a radio just out of tune. As if they're still watching, as if they're waiting for me to drive again, for me to pass under that overpass one more time. And I know, deep down, the next time I do, I might not come out the other side. It was late February of last year when it happened. I remember because I had just come back from visiting my aunt in El Paso, and I decided, on a whim, to take the long drive south toward Presidio. If you've ever been down that way, you know, it's almost hypnotic. Long stretches of empty desert, the road unraveling in front of you like black tape. Sky so wide it makes you feel like a speck. The weather was clear, low 50s at night, and there wasn't a single cloud out. The kind of night where the stars feel sharp, like you could cut your hand on them. It was about 9:40 p.m. when I left Marfa, heading toward Presidio. I know the exact time because I had glanced at the clock on my dash, checking to see if I'd make it to the motel before 10. The road was empty except for me, and my headlights caught nothing but rocks, sand, and the occasional broken fence, post. Even in that stillness, there was always this low hum in my ears, maybe from the car or maybe from the desert itself. About 20 minutes into the drive, I heard it. Police sirens, not faint, not distant, sharp, shrill, and right behind me. My stomach dropped instantly. I checked my speed, 58 and a 60. I hadn't seen a cop the whole trip, hadn't even passed another car since leaving town. But those sirens were real. My rearview mirror showed nothing, just empty asphalt glowing in the reflection of my taillights. Still, instinct kicked in. I pulled over onto the gravel shoulder, slowing until the crunching of rocks under my tires was the only sound. I rolled down the window and waited. The sirens didn't pass, they didn't fade, they circled. That's the only way I can describe it. The sound seemed to move around me in slow arcs, like a pack of dogs closing in. 1 second it was behind me, then off to the left, then right in front, as if some unseen cruiser had driven through the desert sand and cut me off. Except there was nothing there, just sagebrush, dirt, and darkness. I waited for the flashing lights, for a car door slamming, for an officer's boots on gravel. Nothing. After what felt like forever, the wail started to thin out, like it was pulling back into the distance. I sat there, knuckles tight on the wheel, heart pounding. Finally, I eased back onto the road and kept driving, telling myself it had to be some kind of echo. Sound carries strange in the desert, especially at night. That was all. I almost convinced myself, until I looked down at the clock again. 10:27:40 minutes. I had been sitting there for nearly 40 minutes, though I swore only 5 or 6 had passed. I don't remember the next stretch of road clearly, just a blur of headlights and cracked asphalt. By the time the lights of Presidio appeared on the horizon, I felt wrung out like I'd driven through a storm. The motel I'd booked was a squat, peeling place off the main road. Neon sign half lit, buzzing faintly. The woman at the desk didn't ask for my ID, just handed me the key like she'd been waiting. The tag had a faded number scratched into it. 12. The room smelled like mildew and bleach. Thin curtains, faded quilt, the hum of the old AC unit even though it wasn't running. I locked the door, double-checked the window, and sat on the bed trying to shake the unease that had settled over me. Around 1 a.m. the sirens came back. They didn't blare past the motel like traffic. They stopped. Right outside, that same circling, wail, swelling and dipping, as though cars were weaving around the parking lot. Except no headlights bled through the curtains, no crunch of tires on gravel. Just the sound, winding around and around until I pressed my palms to my ears. I wanted to call the front desk, ask if they heard it too, but the phone on the nightstand was dead. No dial tone. My cell had no service either, though it had been full bars when I'd checked in. I didn't sleep. Not really. I must have dozed for a few minutes because at some point I jerked awake to silence. I thought the noise had finally stopped until I noticed something worse. From under the door, a thin strip of red light was leaking in, steady and pulsing, like the glow of an emergency siren. I didn't get up to check. Couldn't. I just lay there until it faded, until the dawn light bled weakly through the curtains. When I finally stepped outside, the parking lot was empty. Not a single car, just my own. The gravel was undisturbed, no tire tracks, no footprints, nothing. I turned in the key and the woman at the desk looked at me without speaking, like she knew. Her eyes flicked once to the door, then back to me, and I swear she mouthed the word go. I didn't stop driving until I hit El Paso again. That was a year ago. I still hear them sometimes late at night, faint and circling even though I'm hundreds of miles from that desert. And last week, outside my apartment window, I woke at 3 a.m. to the sound of sirens pulling up and stopping, not on the street, but right under my window. When I looked outside, there was nothing, not even the sound of an engine cooling down, just the faint echo of wailing, circling the building until it faded into the night. It was the night of October 14th, 2019, around 8:30 p.m., on a two-lane road that runs between Tyler and White House, Texas. I remember the exact date because it was a Monday, and I had just gotten off a late shift at the distribution warehouse, off Highway 64. My phone showed the temperature as 58 degrees, the kind of cool fall evening where you could finally crack the window and smell burning wood from someone's fireplace mixing with the wet leaves on the road. I was tired. My hands were stiff from unloading pallets all day, and the road was nearly empty. That stretch between Tyler and White House isn't completely rural, but once you're off the main highway, it's just tree-lined roads and the occasional house with its porch light glowing in the dark. I'd driven that route maybe 100 times before. It was nothing special. But that night, something strange happened. Just past the county line, where the trees pressed close to the shoulder, my headlights swept over what I thought was a deer, at first. I slowed, tapping the brakes out of instinct. But when the light settled, it wasn't an animal. It was a woman. An old woman. Barefoot, standing at the edge of the road. She wore a faded blue house dress, the kind you'd expect to see in the 1950s, and in her hands she clutched a Bible against her chest. Her hair was long and white, tangled, like she'd just gotten out of bed, and she had no shoes. That's what struck me. The asphalt was cold, the ditches muddy, and yet her bare feet looked pale and clean. I rolled down the window halfway, not stopping but slowing enough to glance as I passed. "Ma'am, you okay?" I called out. She turned her head toward me with a stiffness that made my stomach knot. Her face caught the glare of my headlights, and for half a second I thought her eyes hadn't adjusted to the brightness. They looked like dark glass reflecting nothing, but as I got closer I realized they weren't reflecting at all. They were black, not just dark brown, completely black like oil. I startled, jerked the wheel a little, and my right tire caught the rumble. "Strip," I corrected quickly, heart pounding, and when I looked back in the rearview mirror, she was still standing there, same place, same posture. I told myself it was my imagination. Long shift, bad lighting, headlights playing tricks. I forced myself to keep driving, but a mile or so down the road, I caught movement again in the corner of my vision. Another figure, on the shoulder. It was her. Same woman. Bare feet. Blue dress. Bible clutched tight. She wasn't walking toward me from the distance. She was just there, waiting ahead like she'd been dropped back onto the road. I slowed almost to a stop this time. My chest tightened. The hair on my arms prickled as if the air itself had turned electric. She lifted her head slowly, and though my headlights hit her full in the face, she didn't squint. Her eyes were still that same inky black. I rolled the window all the way up. My mouth had gone dry. I pressed the gas, drove faster than I should have down that winding road, telling myself I'd already passed her once. It wasn't possible to pass her again. It was just some other old woman out late. But the thought didn't stick, because about another half-mile down she appeared again. Same spot at the edge of the road, same dress, same barefoot stance, Bible, black eyes. This time she stepped forward. Not into the lane fully, but enough that I swerved hard to avoid her. My tires screeched. I nearly lost control on the gravel shoulder. I drove the rest of the way home like a bat out of hell. When I pulled into my driveway, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key into the door. My girlfriend at the time, Kara, was half asleep on the couch. She asked what was wrong, and I told her some old woman had been wandering the road barefoot, and I almost hit her. I left out the part about the eyes. It sounded too crazy even as I thought it. Kara said I should call the sheriff's office. I thought about it, but then I realized what I'd have to tell them. There's an old woman with black eyes teleporting along County Road 281. No way, so I just said, I'll call in the morning if I hear she's still out there. But I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, standing at the road's edge waiting for me. The next day I checked the local news and the Tyler paper. Nothing. No missing elderly woman, no accidents, no reports. I even asked around at work casually, but no one had seen her. For a while I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Sleep deprivation does strange things, except it didn't stop. A week later, driving the same road, I saw her again. Same time of night, same place. Only this time she wasn't holding the Bible. Her hands were empty, hanging limp at her sides, and when my headlights washed over her, she raised one arm and pointed directly at me. My whole body went ice cold. I didn't slow. I didn't say a word. I just drove. That night I dreamed of her standing outside my house, not at the edge of the street, but closer, on the lawn, bare feet sinking into the grass, Bible in her hands again, her black eyes fixed on my bedroom window. I woke drenched in sweat, and for the first time in my adult life I left the lights on in the hall. It went on like this for weeks. Always the same road, always at night, always that same figure. Some nights she was closer to the trees, some nights she was nearly in the middle of the lane. Once, I swear, she was kneeling with her head bowed as if praying. I stopped telling Kara about it after she accused me of feeding the paranoia, but one night she was with me in the car when it happened. It was mid-November. We'd gone to dinner in Tyler, and on the way back we took that road. When the headlights lit her up, Kara gasped. "Jesus, do you see her?" I nodded, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles popped. The old woman stood barefoot on the shoulder, staring at us, Bible in hand. Kara whispered, "Why the hell is she out here?" I didn't answer. My throat was too tight. When we passed, Kara turned in her seat to watch. "She's still looking. Oh my God, she's..." Kara cut herself off. Her eyes went wide. She faced forward again, pale as a sheet. "What?" I demanded. Her voice shook. She smiled at me. I wanted to ask what kind of smile. I wanted to know, but some part of me was too afraid of the answer. That was the last time Kara drove that road with me. We broke up 2 months later, for unrelated reasons. Or maybe not. She said I'd changed, that I was distracted, irritable, never sleeping well. She wasn't wrong. I couldn't stop thinking about the old woman. I even started avoiding that road completely, taking the long way around just to get home. But avoidance only lasted so long. In early 2020, I was coming back from visiting my brother in Henderson. It was after midnight, pouring rain, and my GPS routed me through the back roads to avoid a wreck on the main highway. I didn't realize where I was until my headlights hit her again. Only this time, she was standing in the middle of the road. The rain slicked her hair flat against her face, and the Bible she usually clutched was gone. Her arms hung limp at her sides, bare feet in the water, eyes still black. I slammed the brakes, hydroplaned, nearly fishtailed into the ditch. When I looked back up, she was right at my hood. Not standing, leaning, both hands pressed flat against the metal, face inches from the glass. Her eyes bored into mine through the windshield. I don't remember how I got home that night. I don't remember the rest of the drive. I only remember pulling into my driveway, stumbling inside, and locking every door and window. I haven't taken that road since. But here's the thing. 2 weeks ago, I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of something tapping against my bedroom window. When I pulled back the curtain, there were bare footprints in the dew on the grass, leading from the road to my house. And out by the tree line, just at the edge of the shadows, I swear I saw a figure. Woman standing barefoot watching. I live in Wichita Falls, Texas. If you've ever been through here, you know it's flat, wide, and when storms come in, there's nowhere to hide from the sky. People joke about how you can watch your dog run away for 2 days straight. It's one of those towns where the horizon is always visible, whether you want it to be or not. On the morning of May 14, 2017, I was driving south on Highway 287. It was about 10:30 a.m., already warm, high 70s, with that heavy, damp air that presses against you before a storm. The sky was layered, high white streaks sliding over thick gray underbellies, a slow boil in the distance. Nothing unusual for spring in North Texas. I had a thermos of coffee in the cup holder, the radio low, and my windows cracked just enough to let the smell of rain seep in. That's when I noticed it, far out on the eastern horizon, just past the tree line and the telephone poles that ran forever in both directions. A funnel cloud, thin, rope-like, and dipping down from a wall of clouds that looked blacker than the rest. My first thought was, tornado. My second thought, why isn't anyone else on the road slowing down? I eased my truck to the shoulder, squinting against the glare. It was there, no doubt, a twisting column moving just enough to stir up dust beneath it. But the odd thing was, it wasn't drifting or cutting across the land like they usually do. It wasn't tearing up barns or zigzagging unpredictably. It just stayed in one place, like someone had sketched a tornado onto the sky and forgotten to animate it. I pulled out my phone to check radar. Nothing but a storm warning to the north near the Oklahoma border. Clear where I was. No tornado icon blinking on the map. I snapped a couple of photos anyway, thinking it'd be one of those weird things you tell coworkers later. I saw a tornado just sitting there like a scarecrow made of clouds. Except, an hour later, it was still there. I'd driven nearly 60 miles by then, into a different county entirely. And when I glanced east, the funnel was in the exact same spot on the horizon. Not closer, not further. No matter how many turns I took, no matter the angle, it stayed right there. Like it was pacing me, but not moving. By the time I reached Bowie, I was unsettled enough to pull into a gas station, one of those old ones, with cracked pavement and faded Coke machines out front. I grabbed a Gatorade and stood outside pretending to check my tires, just so I could look again. The funnel was still there, needle thin against the sky, barely swaying but never drifting, never touching down properly. An older guy filling up his sedan followed my gaze. "Storm will miss us," he said, casual. "You see that?" I asked, pointing. He glanced again, then shrugged. "Clouds." He got in his car and drove off like he hadn't just ignored something unnatural sitting right in front of us. When I asked the cashier about it, she squinted through the window and shook her head. "Ain't nothing there, hun." I laughed nervously. "The tornado right there?" Her face stayed blank, and the longer I looked at her, the more I realized she wasn't lying. She couldn't see it. That's when the unease rooted itself in me deep and cold. I got back on the highway, but I couldn't stop glancing east. Each time, the funnel stared back, as if it was angled perfectly toward me. I cranked the radio to drown out my nerves, but every song seemed wrong. Lyrics I didn't remember, words slurring in ways that made me think the signal was warped. Static would cut in, not sharp white noise, but whispering static, like voices buried beneath them. Hiss, By the time I made it home that afternoon, my head throbbed with a pressure headache. I stepped into the kitchen, cracked open a beer, and told myself I'd imagined it. Heat and glare and nerves, that was all. Except when I went out back to take the trash, there it was again. Visible between the oaks, still locked in place. For the next week, it never left. Day or night, driving or standing on my porch, if I faced east, I could see it. Sometimes thin, sometimes thick and dark, like it wanted to swallow the fields whole. The weather never matched it. Blue skies, sunset pinks, even clear star-filled nights, yet behind it, that wall of black cloud remained. I stopped mentioning. Eyed after a few tries. My brother laughed and said I was spending too much time online. My neighbor told me it was a water tower I was misseeing. People looked at me like I was drunk or unstable. But I know what I saw. What I still see. One night, I woke at 3:14 a.m. sharp, heart pounding. Not from a dream, I don't remember dreaming at all, but because my room was vibrating. Not shaking, but humming. Low and deep, like the resonance of a massive engine. I staggered to the window, and though the rest of the town was dark and quiet, the funnel was lit from within. Not lightning, not fire, just a dull red glow pulsing slow in time with the hum. I stood frozen until it stopped, maybe 2 minutes later. Then the night went silent again. Over the next month, I started noticing other things. Birds wouldn't fly near that direction. I'd see flocks circle wide around it, never crossing its path. Dogs whined and pulled their leashes if walked east of town. My phone began filling with corrupted photos every time I tried to capture it. Blank gray images, or black streaks across. The frame, once a blurred shape like a face, eyes stretched too wide, mouth hanging open, smiling at me through the distortion. I started having nosebleeds. My clocks ticked out of rhythm. I'd fall asleep and wake with my sheets damp, like I'd been sweating through nightmares I couldn't remember. And then came the night I decided to drive toward it. It was late June, just after midnight. I couldn't take it anymore, the constant pull of that unmoving storm. I told myself if I just drove until it disappeared, I could let it go. I packed a flashlight, bottled water, and got in the truck. At first, it was the same as always. No matter how far I drove, the funnel stayed on the horizon, never closer, never further. But after about 45 minutes, the world changed. The highway emptied. Not just of cars, but of light. Every billboard I passed was blank. The street lamps gave off a faint, sickly green instead of white. When I checked my phone, the screen was filled with static, the time-flickering nonsense symbols. That's when I realized my headlights weren't reaching as far as they should. The beam cut off sharply about 30 feet ahead, like the darkness was solid. And then, at the 30-foot mark, something crossed the road. Not an animal, not a person. Something taller than the cab of my truck, thin as a lamppost, bending slightly as if under an invisible wind. It didn't walk. It just glided across the asphalt, then vanished into the dark field beyond. I stopped the truck right there, hands slick on the wheel, lungs burning from holding my breath. For a full 5 minutes, I couldn't move. Then I turned around and drove home without looking east again. I haven't tried since. The funnel is still there. Today's August 3rd, 2017, and as I type this, it's visible between the blinds. Thin as a pencil stroke, unmoving, endless. Last week I heard a knock at my back door at exactly 3:14 a.m. When I looked, there was no one, just the faint sound of wind, though the trees were still. 2 nights ago, I found dirt on my kitchen floor, tracked in from the back door. Footprints too long to be human, too narrow, like someone had dragged the edge of a shovel through mud and stepped carefully, deliberately. And last night, when I woke to that humming again, I finally understood. It isn't a tornado, it's watching, and I don't think it's waiting anymore. It was October 14th, 2021, a Thursday around 5:30 in the evening. I was driving west on Route 18, just outside of Sibley, Illinois. The sun was sinking low, bleeding orange through a gray film of clouds, and the air had that brittle, cooling quality that always made me think of high school football games. I'd been behind the wheel for hours, restless from work, and my back was stiff enough that I decided to pull off at one of the side roads to stretch my legs. I wasn't in any hurry to get home, and the thought of standing in the quiet fields for a few minutes sounded better than another hour trapped inside my car. The dirt road I chose wound past an old farmhouse that looked like it hadn't seen a coat of paint since the early 90s. Its porch sagged, the screen door dangled crooked from a hinge, and weeds pressed high against the foundation. I eased my car off to the side and cut the engine. The silence was immediate, almost startling. Out there, with nothing but wind hissing through the brittle stalks of leftover corn, you realize just how loud the world usually is. That's when I saw it. The burned-out car sitting in the field beside the farmhouse. It was maybe 50 yards away, rust brown with patches of flaked paint that used to be blue. The whole inside was scorched black. Seats collapsed into charcoal shapes, dashboard melted into a warped, bubbled mess. The kind of ruin you only see when something has gone terribly wrong. The shell of it sat tilted, like one of the tires had blown out long ago and no one ever bothered to move it. I should have left it at that, an old wreck abandoned in some forgotten farmland. But something about it pulled at me. Maybe it was the way it seemed out of place. The house I could understand. Plenty of old farms get left behind. But a car, torched from the inside and left in the middle of a field, was harder to make sense of. I walked toward it. The closer I got, the worse it looked. Melted strips of plastic clung to the steering column. The metal roof was bowed from the heat, edges sharp where they had split. I stopped a few feet away and leaned forward, peering through the shattered driver's side window. The smell of burned rubber and ash still clung faintly, even though this wreck must have been years old. That's when I noticed the windshield. At first I thought it was just dirty. The glass had a foggy film to it, a kind of uneven hazing. But when I stepped around the front, my chest tightened. They weren't smudges, they were handprints, dozens of them. Pressed from the inside, each one smeared, streaked, like whoever left them had dragged their palms hard against the glass. Some were small, like a child's. Others were adult-sized, fingertips distinct, even after all this time. The angle of them told me one thing with sickening certainty. They weren't made by someone trying to get in. They were made by people trying to get out. I don't know how long I stood there staring. My skin prickled, my stomach hollowed out, and every instinct screamed at me to walk back to my car, start it, and drive until I forgot I had ever stopped. But I didn't. I stayed there too long enough to hear something shift inside the farmhouse. It was faint, just a creak, like a floorboard under weight. I snapped my head toward the house, but the windows were dark and the doorway yawned black. My rational brain tried to tell me it was the wind, that old wood moves, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had just leaned forward, curious, to see who was standing out by the wreck. I told myself I'd glance just once more at the car before leaving. I stepped closer, stupidly drawn in, until my own reflection stared back faintly in the fogged glass of the windshield. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. The handprints were fresh. Not all of them, but a few near the bottom corner of the glass, wet, clearer than the others with the shine of moisture that hadn't dried yet. The ridges of the fingerprints stood out sharp against the haze. I don't know how I missed it the first time. My breath fogged faintly on the outside of the glass and I could see the difference. These new prints weren't mine. I didn't think. I turned and walked fast back toward my car. The grass hissed around my legs and the sound of my footsteps felt too loud in the still air. Halfway there, I heard it again, the farmhouse door creaking. This time it was sharper, longer, as if it had been opened. I didn't look. I couldn't. My pulse was in my throat and the back of my neck crawled with the certainty that someone was watching me. I got in, slammed the door and locked it. My fingers shook so badly I fumbled the keys, dropping them into the passenger seat before jamming them into the ignition. The engine turned over and I pulled out, gravel spitting from under my tires as I swerved back onto the main road. I didn't look in the rearview mirror, not until I was a good mile away. When I finally glanced back, I half expected to see headlights following me, or worse, a figure standing in the middle of the road. But the highway stretched empty behind me, nothing but flat fields and the faint outline of the farmhouse sinking into the dusk. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the streaked prints, the small ones layered over the large, all reaching upward against the glass. I told myself it was just some old wreck, maybe kids messing around had smeared their hands there recently. But that didn't explain the smell of burned rubber still lingering. It didn't explain the sound of the farmhouse door. And it sure as hell didn't explain why those prints looked wet. I've driven that same stretch of Route 18 a dozen times since then, but I've never once pulled off near that farmhouse again. I don't even glance toward it anymore. The one time I did, maybe 2 months later, I swore the burned-out car wasn't in the field anymore, but I can't be sure, and what keeps me up some nights is wondering if it ever really was. It was a little after 2 in the morning when I pulled off Highway 17, somewhere between San Angelo and Big Spring, Texas. The date sticks in my head because it was the night of July 8, 2019, a Monday rolling into Tuesday. I remember the weather, exactly. A warm, heavy night where the air clung to your skin, buzzing with cicadas, the faint smell of rain lingering though the asphalt was dry. My dash clock read 2:07 a.m. when the glowing red and blue neon came into view. It was a roadhouse diner, one of those wide, low-slung buildings set back from the road with a gravel lot that crackled under my tires. The neon sign buzzed faintly as I pulled in, "Eat 24 hours" in block letters, and beneath it a flickering arrow pointing toward the front doors. I was grateful. I'd been on the road nearly 9 hours and my eyelids were heavy, my stomach empty. I parked near the entrance, cut the engine, and sat a moment listening to the night. Aside from the low hum of the neon, it was silent. Not even a truck passing on the highway. That struck me as odd. That stretch of road usually had some long-haul rigs rumbling through, but that night, the world felt abandoned. The glass doors at the entrance reflected my headlights back at me as I pushed them open. The smell hit first, not grease and fryer oil, but fresh food. Coffee, sizzling meat, butter melting on pancakes. My stomach growled. Inside, the diner was lit by long fluorescent tubes, steady, buzzing faintly. The place was spotless. Every booth gleaming vinyl, every napkin dispenser polished chrome, and every table had food on it. Plates sat steaming, eggs over easy, burgers with still glossy cheese, plates of fries piled high, pies with perfect wedges cut and waiting. Glasses of soda fizzed quietly, steam curled from mugs of coffee. The grill behind the counter hissed like someone had just thrown bacon on, though no one was there to tend it, and no one was anywhere. Not a single person in the entire diner. I stood there in the doorway for what felt like a full minute, just listening. The jukebox in the corner played a low song I didn't recognize, tinny but warm, like something from the 1950s. A ceiling fan creaked slowly overhead. And somewhere, it's hard to explain this part, I heard the faint scrape of a fork against a plate. "Hello?" I called out, my voice cracking from the silence. No answer. I walked further inside, the soles of my shoes squeaking faintly against the tile. My heart was already drumming in my ears. The smell of food was strong, real, too real for this to be some trick. I passed a booth where a half-eaten sandwich sat, bread torn away, mustard smeared on the plate. Across from it, a mug of coffee half empty, like someone had just taken a sip. "Anyone back there?" I called toward the kitchen. No reply. The grill continued to sizzle. A spatula leaned against it, handle dark with grease. I could see fries still browning in the oil, bubbling like they'd been dropped in seconds ago. I remember saying out loud, just to break the tension, "Okay, this is weird as hell." The sound of my own voice was shaky. I thought maybe it was some kind of prank. Maybe the staff had all stepped out for a smoke break. Though why leave food mid-cook? Why abandon customers mid-meal? And where were those customers? The jukebox clicked and another old song began. This time I did recognize it faintly. Blue Moon. The volume rose just a little as though someone had turned the dial. That's when the air changed. It's hard to describe. The smell of food dulled, replaced by something faint and wrong, like wet concrete after rain mixed with something sweet, almost chemical, like antifreeze. The buzzing of the fluorescent lights grew louder. My skin prickled as though static filled the air. I backed toward the door, my instincts screaming at me to leave. And that's when I saw it. In the wide mirror behind the counter, the one meant to reflect the length of the booths, there was movement. Someone was sitting in the booth nearest the window, right where I had just looked and seen nothing. A figure, back turned to me, shoulders hunched, eating. Their fork rose and fell in slow, deliberate motions. But when I whipped my head around, the booth was empty. The plate of food was there, the half-drunk soda glass, but no person. I turned back to the mirror. The figure was still there, seated, still eating. My throat closed up. I stumbled backward, knocking into a chair. The scrape of its legs against tile echoed loud enough to make me flinch. The figure in the mirror froze. Slowly, too slowly, it began to turn its head toward me. I didn't wait to see the face. I bolted for the door, shoving it open so hard it smacked against the outside wall. The warm night air rushed in and I nearly tripped on the gravel as I ran for my car. My hands shook so badly I fumbled the keys, dropping them twice before managing to jam one into the ignition. The diner glowed in my rearview mirror, neon flickering, like a heartbeat. As I pulled out, tires spitting gravel, the jukebox music swelled behind me, louder than it had any right to be, as though the sound system was wired directly into my skull. The last thing I remember before tearing down the highway at 90 miles an hour was the faint smell of bacon still clinging to my clothes. I didn't stop again that night. I drove until dawn, shaking, checking my mirrors every 30 seconds. Here's the part I haven't told anyone because it makes me question whether I lost my mind that night. When I checked my mileage the next morning, I had gone only 22 miles since pulling off at that roadhouse. My fuel gauge confirmed it. But I swear to you, I drove for over 3 hours before the sun rose, and I have never been able to find that diner again, not on maps, not in person, not even when I retraced that stretch of Highway 17 with 2 friends, in the daylight. It isn't there. But some nights when I'm driving long and late, my car will fill with the faint smell of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon. And in my rearview mirror, just for a second, I'll catch the flicker of neon. I don't stop anymore. It was late on a Friday night, October 14th, 2022, around 11:45 p.m., when I found myself on the long stretch of Highway 90 between Del Rio and Uvalde, Texas. If you've ever driven that road at night, you know it's a lonely one. Nothing but flat desert scrubland, the occasional twisted mesquite tree and the endless dark horizon swallowing the world on both sides. The sky was clear that night, moonless, with so many stars scattered above it almost looked fake, like someone had pricked holes in a vast sheet of black velvet. My phone had lost service 20 miles back, and the last gas station I'd passed was in Brackettville, nearly an hour behind me. I had the windows cracked for the night air. It carried that dry, dusty smell of Texas desert mixed with the faint tang of asphalt. The hum of my tires was steady, hypnotic, until my headlights caught something unusual up ahead, a convoy of trucks. At first I thought it was road construction, equipment, or maybe a group of military vehicles, which isn't unheard of around there. But as I drew closer, I realized they were semis. Not just a couple, but a line of them. 6, maybe 7, all black, completely unmarked. No company logos, no writing on the trailers, no reflective tape. Even stranger, they had no headlights. Just hulking shadows rolling silently down the highway at around 50 miles an hour. I slowed instinctively, keeping a few hundred feet back. My brights caught a glimpse of their rear ends, no license plates on any of them. That prickled the back of my neck. I leaned forward in my seat, trying to see if I could spot drivers in the cabs. The windows looked dark, too dark, even when my lights angled across them. It was as if they were tinted to an impossible degree, swallowing the light instead of reflecting it. I told myself it had to be some kind of government convoy. That stretch of Texas is full of border patrol, and I figured maybe it was some clandestine transport. Though even then, why would they risk driving without lights? Still, I matched their speed, hanging back far enough to feel like I wasn't intruding but close enough to watch. 20 minutes passed like that. My music played low in the background, some old rock station out of San Antonio that was beginning to fade into static. The trucks didn't change formation once. Perfect spacing between them. Not a single lane change, not a single brake light flickering. Just a silent procession moving through the desert night. Then, all at once, their taillights appeared. Not gradually, not one after another. Every truck's rear lights blinked on in perfect unison. The red glow painted the road, and for the first time, I felt a deep unease settle in my stomach. That kind of precision wasn't normal. It wasn't human. About 5 minutes later, the lead truck's right blinker began flashing. The entire convoy slowed, and one by one they peeled off onto a narrow dirt road that cut into the brush. I slowed as well, coasting to the shoulder just past the turnoff. I watched in my mirrors as the line of trucks disappeared down the road, their taillights glowing steadily until at the exact same moment they all went dark again, not dimming, not fading with distance, just gone. The desert swallowed them whole. I sat there for a long time, engine idling, staring into that empty stretch of road. My chest felt tight. The night was so silent it pressed against my ears. Even the crickets seemed muted, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I thought about pulling out my phone, maybe dropping a pin, but I still had no service. I don't know how long I waited, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 15, before finally convincing myself to keep driving. I told myself I'd imagined the worst of it, that maybe I'd just witnessed some covert military operation. But then, 20 miles down the road, something happened that I still can't explain. Headlights bloomed in my rearview mirror, a lot of them. My first thought was that another set of semis had caught up to me. But when the lights drew closer, I realized they weren't headlights at all. They were tail lights. A long line of red lights moving in perfect unison behind me, keeping pace. It wasn't possible. There was no way the trucks could have circled around without me seeing them. No way they could have left that dirt road and gotten back on the highway ahead of me without passing. Yet there they were, maybe a dozen sets of taillights, glowing steady, following me like predators in the dark. I pressed the gas harder, my pulse thundering in my ears. 90, 95. My car rattled at the speed, but the lights behind me didn't shrink. If anything, they grew closer. At some point, I don't know when, I don't even know how far I drove, they simply weren't there anymore. I glanced in my mirror and the road behind me was empty. Just darkness stretching for miles. By the time I pulled into Uvalde, I was shaking so badly I could barely hand my card to the motel clerk. I didn't sleep that night. Every time a semi passed on the nearby road, the sound made my stomach knot. I checked the dirt road on Google Maps the next morning before heading out. I swear it wasn't there. The satellite view showed nothing but desert scrub and flat land. No turnoffs for 10 miles in either direction from the spot I remembered. I've driven that highway 3 times since, during the day, trying to find it. I never have. And yet some nights when the house is quiet and the street outside is empty, I'll look out my window and I swear I catch the faint glow of red lights moving in a straight line down the road, perfectly spaced, perfectly silent, like they're still following me. It happened on a Sunday evening in late October 2016, about 15 miles outside Corpus Christi, Texas. I was driving back from visiting my aunt, who lived in a small town called Refugio. I'd left a little later than I should have, around 6:30, and by the time I got onto Highway 77, the sun had already dropped low enough that the whole horizon was bleeding orange and purple. The air smelled faintly like mesquite and salt. If you've ever driven through that part of Texas, you know the road feels endless. Flat stretches of asphalt broken up by the occasional gas station or run-down diner, with telephone poles like skeletal spines running alongside you into forever. I was alone, except for my old cooler rattling in the back seat. The radio was tuned to some Corpus Christi country station, but it kept cutting in and out with static as I got farther into the sticks. I was sipping a lukewarm Dr. Pepper and just trying to keep myself awake, telling myself I'd hit the Buc-ee's on the edge of town if I needed coffee. It was one of those quiet drives where you settle into your own head and almost forget where you're going, your mind wandering as mile markers flick by. Around 7:45, the sky had gone fully dark. Out there, away from the city, it gets dark in a way that feels thicker, heavier. My headlights carved out two sharp cones in front of me, catching little swirls of bugs in the beams. And beyond that, there was just the black stretch of road and the occasional flicker of a reflector post. No other cars for miles. I remember rolling the window down a few inches because the cabin felt stuffy, and the cool night air came in with the faint smell of dead grass and something swampy. That's when I saw the figure up ahead on the shoulder. First I thought it was someone whose car had broken down, maybe trying to wave me down. As I got closer, my headlights picked out the details. He was a man, standing straight, with one arm raised, palm out. He was dressed in an old-style police uniform, dark trousers with a stripe, a pressed tan shirt, and one of those peaked caps with the shiny black brim. His uniform looked crisp, almost like something out of a movie set in the 1950s. The strangest part was how spotless it looked. No dust, no scuff marks, no sign of wear, even though he was standing in the dirt by the side of a highway that hadn't been repaved in years. I slowed down instinctively. I wasn't speeding, but something about a cop on a dark road makes you second-guess yourself. As I rolled to a near stop, he stepped closer to the edge of the lane and leaned down toward my window. His face was illuminated by my headlights. A clean-shaven man, probably mid-40s, with sharp features and pale skin that caught the light almost too well, like the reflection off wax paper. His eyes were a washed-out gray. And when he spoke, his voice was calm, polite, but had a flatness to it that made the hairs on my arms stand up. Roads closed up ahead. Best turn back. That's all he said. Simple as that. His hand rested on the edge of my open window, and for a second I noticed how cold the air felt near him, like the warmth had been sucked out of the night. I glanced forward down the stretch of highway, but there were no signs, no cones, no flashing lights. Nothing to indicate the road was blocked, just blacktop and silence. Closed? What happened? I asked. My own voice sounded too loud, shaky in the stillness. The patrolman straightened up, touched the brim of his cap in a slow, old-fashioned salute, and repeated in that same calm, flat tone. Roads closed up ahead. Best turn back. Blinked, confused, and turned my head toward the shoulder to look for his cruiser. There was nothing. No headlights, no taillights, no vehicle of any kind. Just an empty stretch of gravel and a barbed wire fence cutting into the brush. When I looked back toward him, he was gone. Not walking away, not fading into the dark. Gone. The space where he'd been standing was empty, as if he'd never been there at all. My heart started hammering in my chest. I spun my head toward the rearview mirror, half expecting to see him standing behind my car. The road behind me was just as empty as in front. I sat there idling in the middle of the highway, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. My brain scrambled for explanations. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe I'd dozed off for a second and imagined him. But I knew what I'd seen. I could still feel the cold of his hand lingering on the edge of my window. Finally, I pressed the gas and eased forward. I told myself I'd drive another half-mile, and if I saw any sign of construction or an accident, I'd turn back. But the road ahead was just as empty and smooth as before. No detours, no lights, nothing. I kept driving, faster this time, my eyes locked on the yellow lines and the twin beams of my headlights. For the next 10 miles, I didn't pass a single car. The silence of it all pressed down on me so heavily, I kept flicking my eyes to the rear view, certain that if I looked long enough, I'd see that patrolman sitting in my backseat, cap shadowing his eyes. When I finally hit the edge of Corpus, traffic picked up, neon signs appeared, and the world felt normal again. I pulled into the Buc-ee's lot and sat there for 15 minutes with the engine off, just breathing and staring at the people walking in and out like nothing in the world was wrong. Later that week, I told my aunt what happened. She listened, quietly, nodding. And when I finished, she said something that still unsettles me. "You're not the first. People around here have been talking about him for years. They say he's a patrolman who died in a wreck back in the 50s, hit head-on, while flagging someone down. Folks still see him on that stretch of 77. Always the same thing, he tells them to turn back. Some people say he's protecting drivers, others say he's just repeating what he was doing the night he died." I asked her if anyone knew what would have happened if I'd turned back. She shrugged, looked away and muttered, "Some say you never make it where you're going." I didn't know what to say. To this day, I won't drive that stretch of highway alone at night. And sometimes when I'm stopped at a red light, I catch myself checking the mirrors, half expecting to see a pale face leaning in, gray eyes fixed on me, waiting to tell me once again, "Road's closed up ahead. Best turn back." On November 14th, 2019, just after 9 p.m., I was driving west on Highway 180, a long, flat stretch that cuts through open fields before you hit the outskirts of mineral wells. The sky was black and clean, no moon, no cloud cover, just a spread of stars like broken glass scattered over the horizon. It was cold, about 40 degrees, and the heater in my car kept cycling on and off with that faint dusty smell it always carried at the start of winter. I'd been on the road since Dallas, visiting a friend in Fort Worth earlier in the day, and was making the last leg home. The highway was mostly empty. Occasionally, a pair of headlights would crest in the distance, pass in a blaze of brightness, and vanish into the dark behind me. Aside from that, it was nothing but the drone of my tires and the low hum of the engine. I had the radio off. I remember that detail because silence had started to feel too heavy, too complete. My car wasn't new, it rattled, it had quirks, but on that stretch of road it might as well have been floating through space. It was about 20 minutes outside Mineral Wells when I saw it. A pale shape in the road ahead, small, right in the center of my lane. At first I thought it was just trash, maybe a blown tire or a cardboard box. I eased my foot off the gas and squinted into the beams of my headlights. That's when I realized it wasn't trash. It was a child's car seat. It sat upright, perfectly balanced on its base, facing away from me. Not toppled over, not at an angle, centered as if it had been deliberately placed there. My stomach tightened immediately like I'd swallowed ice water. I slowed to a crawl, the tires crunching against the shoulder gravel as I pulled over and stopped a few feet short of it. I don't know what made me get out. Maybe instinct, maybe a sense of duty. You don't leave something like that in the middle of a highway. Somebody could swerve to avoid it and cause a wreck. So I threw my hazard lights on, zipped my jacket up to my chin, and stepped out into the cold. The wind cut across the empty fields and tugged at my sleeves, carrying that faint smell of dirt and old weeds you only get at night in rural Texas. The car seat was older, faded, with the patterned fabric worn down to a dull gray. It had a buckle, straps twisted slightly, and a faint film of dust across the surface. It looked like it had been sitting outside for a while, though I had no idea how it ended up standing perfectly upright in the middle of the road. I bent down, slid my hands under the plastic base, and lifted it. It was lighter than I expected. Empty, of course. That should have been it. I should have just dragged it to the shoulder, tossed it aside, and gotten back in my car. But the moment my fingers brushed the plastic, I froze. Behind me, clear as day, I heard a baby giggle. Not muffled, not distant. Right behind me. High-pitched, soft, like a baby just discovering laughter for the first time. It was brief, no more than 2 seconds, but it was unmistakable. My whole body locked. The seat nearly slipped out of my hands. I turned fast, heart hammering, scanning the highway in both directions. Nothing. Just my car idling with its hazards ticking, the empty fields on either side. Darkness stretching out forever. No cars, no people, no babies. I stood there for what felt like a full minute, my breath clouding in front of me. My ears strained so hard it hurt. Nothing but the faint rattle of dry grass in the wind. Finally, I told myself it had to be in my head. Maybe I'd heard something shift in my car or a scrap of sound carried on the wind. I didn't believe that, not really, but it was the only explanation that wouldn't send me running. I dragged the car seat off the road and dropped it near the ditch, brushing the dust off my hands. I didn't look at it again. I just hurried. Back to my car, slammed the door shut, and locked it out of instinct. When I pulled back onto the road, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The hazard lights flashed red against the car seat. For a split second, I swear it wasn't empty anymore. There was a shape in it, small, sitting upright. The lights blinked again and it was gone. Just the car seat, gray and old, sitting abandoned in the dark. I didn't stop again. I didn't even breathe until mineral wells lit up the horizon. But I can still hear that sound, as clear as if it's happening right behind me now. The giggle, sharp and soft at the same time, carried by nothing. And here's the part that's kept me awake at night. 2 weeks later, driving the same stretch of road, I saw the car seat again. Same spot, same position, upright, waiting. It was late afternoon on Thursday, March 7th, 2019, when I stopped for gas at a lonely little station off Highway 385 in West Texas, somewhere between Midland and the vague nowhere stretch that leads out toward Pecos. The air had that faint sting of sand carried on the wind, the kind that grits between your teeth when you talk. The sky was the pale bleached color it gets before sunset in the desert, drained of warmth with the sun burning like a white hole on the horizon. I remember the silence most of all. No other cars, no voices, not even the clink of tools from the garage bay. Just the buzz of a flickering fluorescent above the register and the dry squeak of the old metal door when I pushed it open. The place was the kind of gas station you'd swear belonged to another decade. Dusty Coca-Cola signs, faded postcards curled at the edges on a spinner rack, and a cooler humming unevenly in the back. There was a man behind the counter who looked about 60, rail thin, wearing a trucker cap with no logo on it. He didn't greet me, didn't even look at me until I set a bottle of water down. His eyes were gray, bloodshot, like he hadn't slept in days. I prepaid $40, went back out and pumped the gas. My car door creaked when I opened it. I noticed because the silence felt too thick. The desert beyond the lot stretched. Flat and endless, the horizon a wavering line in the heat. No birds, no insects, nothing. Just me, the pump clicking off, and the crunch of gravel under my boots. When I went back inside to grab the receipt, the man had already printed it. He didn't say a word, just slid it across the counter with a stiff motion. The paper was warm, still smelling faintly of ink and overheated plastic. I tucked it in my wallet without looking. Only later, a couple of miles down the highway, did I pull it back out to log my expenses. At the very bottom, under the date and the total, the receipt said, "See you again soon." My full name. Not just "thank you" or "come again," but my actual name. Not my cardholder name either. I had paid in cash. My name isn't common. Seeing it typed there, clean and perfect, felt like someone had pressed an icy hand to the back of my neck. At first, I told myself it had to be some kind of glitch. Maybe they had my name on file from years ago. Maybe I'd stopped there before and forgotten. But no, I'd never been on that stretch of road in my life. I crumpled the receipt and shoved it deep in the glove box, telling myself I'd laugh about it later. The highway was empty for miles. As dusk fell, my headlights caught nothing but scrub brush and distant power poles. Every so often I checked the rear view, and I swear I saw a pair of headlights hanging far back, just on the edge of sight. They stayed there too long, never closing the distance, never falling away. My stomach twisted. I slowed a little, and so did they. I sped up, and the lights grew brighter, closer, until I could almost make out the grill. Then they vanished, just gone, like someone had killed the engine in the middle of the desert. But when I glanced back again, my headlights reflected faintly off glass, a windshield, before it slipped back into the dark. By the time I hit Pecos, I was sweating through my shirt. I pulled into a diner just to be around people. I sat there for almost an hour, sipping bad coffee, pretending to read the menu, watching the parking lot through the window. My car was the only one under the buzzing sodium lights. No sign of the other vehicle. I kept the receipt, I don't know why. Maybe because I needed proof, something tangible. When I showed it to my roommate back in Austin, he frowned. "How would they even know your name?" he asked. "They didn't swipe your card, right?" "No, cash." "So then, yeah, that's not right." He told me to throw it out, and I almost did, but part of me couldn't. Every time I reached for it, I felt this strange pull, like tossing it would be a mistake. For the next few weeks, little things kept happening. Once, a crumpled gas station receipt, not the same one but identical in style, showed up tucked under my windshield wiper. Blank except for the words, "Welcome back." Another time, I found one slipped through the crack of my apartment door. This one had a timestamp for 3:15 a.m., a time I was home and asleep, and a total of 0.00. I stopped sleeping well. I started having this dream where I was standing in the gas station again, but the fluorescent light was buzzing louder, and the dear man behind the counter never looked up. He just kept printing receipts one after another, the paper curling onto the floor in long strips. When I picked one up, it was always the same. "See you again soon." The final straw was 3 months later. I was cleaning out my car and found another receipt wedged deep between the seat and the console. This one had today's date. Printed across the bottom in that same perfect font were the words, "You never left." And here's the part that really fucks with me. I don't remember leaving. Not that station, not that town, not that desert. Sometimes when I wake up in the middle of the night, I can hear that receipt printer whirring in the dark, spitting out another strip of paper. And every time I check my wallet, no matter how many times I empty it, there's always one folded inside waiting. The last one I pulled out didn't even bother with words. Just my name, typed over and over, until the ink bled through the page.